Okay, so now we're going on to the second video as I'm letting my jars warm up. My ambered ones, 1 liter and 1 liter wide mouth, so I can continue just filling up them with my faux broth, you know. And I got that vegetable, right? I said I would do that, so I've got to do that. And then all those miscellaneous herbs and spices and ginger and whatever, and yeah, so I'm working on that, right? And then I'm going to take that box and I'm going to put it down the hall before I put it away, and it's going to sit there, and the social worker's going to come and say, well, you haven't moved that box. I'll be like, well, that's a new box with new jars in it, with new stuff in it, and I haven't quite figured out where I'm going to put it, so it takes me a while sometimes to jimmy things around, right? Because, you know, as I put one thing one set place, I move another thing out, and then, yeah, yada yada. So in the meantime, we'll get back to that in a minute, because it's basically my last little bout with whatever it is that I'm doing. Like I said, I'm at the tail end of my preps, right? So, you know, okay. So in the meantime, I'm looking at this video, and I haven't watched it, so we're going to listen to it for a while. I'm not sure how long it is. How long is this one? 11 minutes and 28 seconds. So depending on how long I talk about the subject, which I remember in my videos, and I'm pretty sure some of them got removed. Yeah, some of them got removed. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to go back and come across them and have my memory jogged, right? Because I was touching on a subject that YouTube either likes to shadow ban or hide. Yeah, even though the information I was providing at the time was legitimate. And of course it was all around that epidemic with the pandemic, right? So they used, you know, that as an excuse with 1 or 2 words or 1 or 2 sentences in a whole video to delete the whole video. Alright, so some of this information here goes in my memory as far back as 2015, when they came in with an accord through, I don't think it was through the World Health Organization, as it was maybe the UN. It was one of those foreign corporations, right? Okay, that were dictating I suppose a global agenda, and they were implementing it through their accords and their frameworks, right? If you remember me back in the day talking about that stuff. And what was her name? Oh geez, I haven't gone to see her for a while now. She got kicked off of YouTube. Well, no, actually I think she's still on YouTube. She just don't talk as freely as she'd like to. Laura Lynn was really touching on this subject, and she was letting loose on BitChute about it, right? As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised if she's not talking about it right now, considering what this is talking about, okay? And it all goes back to those frameworks and accords through that, universal corporation that partners up with countries to push forward a universal agenda, global agenda, whatever. Okay, by any means necessary, so they can take control of I guess of the population on the planet, and, you know, follow through with their Agenda 30 and Agenda 2050 and so on, and smart cities and all yada yada yada. Okay, so the title of this video is "Canada is in Trouble, You'll Own Nothing." Okay, and this is done by a John Flynn real estate state. Real estate state. Okay, he's got 34,000 subscribers. This video was up 2 days ago and got 26,000 views already. And in his description, this is what he wrote. This is in regards to British Columbia, Canada, but you might as well apply this all across Canada, because it is a foreign-driven agenda that falls under, again, I'm not exactly sure what foreign body is running the show here, because I haven't been following up with it for the last couple of years, but it was like up in everybody's face 2-3 years ago when this was coming in through parliaments and people were calling it out. But of course, you know, some people had their videos shut down, some people got deleted, whatever, some people went to jail. I don't know if they went to jail for this, but there was quite a few people that went to jail for something. And this is Canada, and I think some of them are still in jail fighting back on the corruption within our, you know, governments in general, right? So whatever's happening here in Richmond is probably just testing the waters and just coming and exercising on that legislation that's been brought in through the foreign entity, through the federal government of Canada, through Trudeau, and, well, before even Trudeau, because in 2015, I mean, the Liberal government was in power, right? Weren't they? And didn't they come in 2015? All right, so either or. Homeowners in Richmond, BC, are in turmoil after a recent court ruling, okay, because it's going to be done through the courts, right? Giving Aboriginal title to the Chalwakan tribe. Private property owners can no longer secure a mortgage or sell their properties and may face eviction. Okay? It doesn't just stop in British Columbia either. Another land claim, exactly, because it was brought in from a foreign entity, giving Aboriginal people of Canada the right to reclaim their lands, the right to reclaim their lands, as in all of Canada, not just parts of it, all of Canada, under their various tribe names, through this accord or framework that was created, I suppose, to push that agenda where you will own nothing. And then back in the day, the big talk was, well, if you hand over all this power to a group of people, in this case they would be Aboriginal people, who don't have the necessary skills or infrastructure to be able to manage such a huge portfolio in terms of, you know, running utilities like hydro, water, roads, basic amenities like schools and hospitals and yada yada. After it's all said and done, whatever the natives think that they're going to get might backfire on them, because under that accord or framework or whatever, because there's several packets of legislation that's brought this in over a period of, we can say, at least 10 years, right? There's stipulations where if the Aboriginals, once they get their teeth into whatever it is that they're trying to do here, and then take over the land, I suppose, as they evict people out of their properties so that they can take ownership of their land and manage their land, you know, they might not be able to meet the expectations as if you were dealing with a, I don't want to call it a functioning government, but a government in the way we know governments to be today, like the Parliament buildings, right? So therefore, in a roundabout way, the discussion back a couple, 2, 3, 4 years ago when this was all up and, you know, on the internet, and a big kerfuffle, and everybody was putting out the warning, right, to fight back on this legislation as it was coming in from piece to piece to piece, and yada yada. It's kind of a means to even set up the Aboriginal, the Native, First Nation, whatever peoples to fail. And because they won't be able to meet the expectations, whatever it was that they thought they were going to get, they're going to lose it, because those foreign entities that brought in this agenda will just take it over by default, by the contracts that they write between themselves. So, of course, the native people, they're not thinking like that. They're thinking, oh, we get our land, we'll manage, we can do this, we can do that. But at the end of the day, there's no guarantee that they'll be able to follow through. And once they drop the ball, that's when the foreign corporation, whether it's the World Health Organization, the WHO organization, World Health, I guess that would be WHO, right? Or the UN, or whoever, I'm not sure exactly. There's probably more than one. All I know is it's just a foreign entity that's been pushing this agenda, and it's kind of written it in as law, as it falls under the New World Order, or at least the Agenda 20 and Agenda 30 and Agenda 2050 for, sustainable living and all blah, blah, blah. And this is just one means to disconnect people from their assets in a so-called legal way, at the demise of the natives, the Aboriginals, the First Nation people not being able to keep up with the demands, and therefore by default, once they fail, that's when those foreign companies will come in, or non-profits, or whatever the heck they are, like seriously, and will just take over the show. Yeah, it will backfire. That was the warning. It's going to backfire. But of course, nobody's thinking about that. We're going for the land grab, right? Because yada. So private property owners can no longer secure a mortgage or sell their properties and may face eviction. It doesn't just stop, and may face eviction. So if they don't get evicted, what? Do they continue to pay their mortgage, or do they pay rent now? And who are they paying rent to, right? Do you see what I'm saying here? It doesn't just stop in British Columbia either. Another land claim, and that's how it's going to trickle in. It's going to come in under land claims through different tribes throughout all of Canada, okay? Was just launched in Quebec. Also, it seems your property isn't safe in Canada and may no longer be yours. So if my son is thinking to buy property, honestly, he should be thinking to get out of freaking Canada before he invests any kind of money into anything, because it might just be a sinking ship for him and his family. You'll own nothing and be happy. Well, we already know that's been the mantra for quite a long time, right? Started with the poorest of the poor, and now they're chipping away at the middle class, and even those in the upper middle class, because a lot of these people living in Richmond, they're not poor. They're living in nice, beautiful monster homes, and they're not even able to remortgage or even sell the property. What does that tell you? Okay? And they're facing eviction. So what? Are they going to join everybody out on the streets who are already homeless? Is that what's going to happen? Or are they just simply going to disappear like a dirty secret, and everybody's going to hush and cover it all up as they're wheeling and dealing in the back room with body parts? Like, come on, think about it. It seems your property isn't safe in Canada and may no longer be yours. You'll own nothing and be happy is happening a lot quicker than planned these days. Well, they've been planning it. The first time I came into awareness of this so-called agenda that's now coming to fruition was first implemented. It started to be implemented in 2015. And then they brought in another accord or a framework or whatever that was that they called it in 2018. And then all of a sudden we had the lockdowns coming in at the end of 2019, early part of 2020, which completely turned the world upside down, and it hasn't recovered. And now it's like we're in a whole different playing field where, yeah, homelessness is on the rise. People can't afford to buy groceries. Their debt loads are increasing. Right, yada yada, and now they're losing their properties. So, does UNDRIP have anything to do with it? Okay, UNDRIP. I don't know. What's UNDRIP? What is UNDRIP? I'm sure we'll hear about it. So let's listen to this. Okay.
And I don't know who screwed up out there, but the government...
Okay.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for tuning in to this one. This is about the Richmond, BC, Cowichan lands. And I don't know who screwed up out there, but the government sold a bunch of people land from many, many years ago, and now there's Aboriginal title and claims on these lands. So I want...
You see, that's the thing, though. Nobody screwed up. Okay? It's just like that. And what... This is not being done because of a screw-up. Okay? This is being done because of foreign legislation coming in through a... I don't want to say global body that thinks they have the right to dictate to sovereign countries how to manage their politics and run their lives and take over just everything, right? This right? But for whatever reason that's happening and nobody's stopping it because a lot of our politicians are not what we think they are. Plain and simple, that corner, the one with the motherboard in the hair, right? Posing as a corner with the RCMP standing guard as the handler, falsifying a death certificate to cover up what happened to Sierra. That's right there, speaks for itself, people. Okay? You know, and what I'm trying to say is just because somebody walks and talks and looks like a human doesn't mean they're human. Whether they're an android, whether they're a clone, whether they're a hybrid of this, that, and everything else, or whether they're just simply brainwashed, who knows? But they're not what we think they are. So nobody can be surprised because a lot of this shit that we're going through, in my opinion, today is AI driven. I think AI has been around a lot longer than we think, and I don't think everything is up aboard when it comes to just humans being corrupt. I think there is other entities somewhere involved there. Call them shapeshifters, call them skinwalker, call them some, I don't care what you call them, but they're not like us. And yeah, so this is just their playbook, right? Okay, so nobody screwed up, okay, because this is just testing the waters. This is now just starting to act on what is to come. Let's put it that way.
I want to go over what's happening out there, give you an update, because a lot of things have happened in the last week, and there's been meetings and all sorts of stuff going on in the media. And yeah, take another look at the map and any Realtor.ca listings that are in those in that current zone, just to see, is there places listed and what are they listed for? Anyway, let's look at that. And the historical evidence that we have, or cases where other parts of the world where Aboriginal title has been given, or Indigenous title, Native title, whatever you want to call it, and people have been evicted. So there are cases where people have been evicted. And, you know, don't worry about, you know, the lands in Canada and these places. You'll be fine as long as you're a Cowichan tribe member. But if you're not, you might have to worry. All right, so here's a few quick updates if you haven't seen them already. This is from Juno News, and this is at Richmond, BC Town Hall on the Cowichan Aboriginal title decision. Residents are warned. Property values are already plummeting. Lenders and insurers are worried, and the only solution is to overturn this on appeal. Here's another video from a guy. I'm going to play a quick clip up.
That's going to be difficult, though, because this was brought in on a federal level. Back in the day when Uncle John and I used to watch the, you know, Legislative Assembly with their debates on the TV, they never acknowledged, I guess you could say, the Aboriginal people within where the Parliament buildings were.
That's supposed to make it so Twizzler.
Thanks, Andre. Okay, they just went into the debate. And then in around 15, 16, 17, 18, and around that time, all of a sudden, you're listening to these guys open up the Legislative Assembly, whether it's for a budget reading, a debate, or whatever the heck, a bill, whatever it is, they always come in first. Well, we acknowledge the First Nations, Salish people, blah, 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 and then they get on with their business, okay? It never was like that before. And that was because of those accords and those frameworks that were coming in to set the stage to make the parliament, our parliament buildings within our provinces, passive, I guess you could say. Passive would probably be submissive. Passive submissive. It's not even passive aggressive. It's passive submissive to the demands of these tribes that are now acting on the legislation that was brought in by a foreign entity, obviously as a means to disenfranchise Canadian-born people who are not classified as Aboriginal, even though we were born in this country, or we came in as immigrants, like my landlady, for example, and her husband. I mean, they paid their taxes, they bought their houses, right? They put their down payment on, and what right does some group, regardless of what their title is, have to come and take it away from them after all these years? It would give my landlords a heart attack, for crying out loud. Yeah. If they were told that they can't sell this house, that they don't own this house no more, and they can't remortgage this house, and they're on lockdown, and they're expected to give their money now to somebody else, assuming that, who knows, like, we're right, and they might face eviction. What do you think that would do to my landlords, who've been here for who knows how long they've been here for we'll say 50 years, right? What about their kids who were born here, right? Her sons, her daughter-in-law, her grandkids, right? What gives Aboriginals the higher power to, I suppose, write off every other Canadian, regardless of their ethnic heritage, whether they were born in the country, migrated and settled and did all the proper paperwork, whatever, bought asset, right? Okay. Well, that's what it's coming down to.
This just where he mentions about his mortgage, but Richmond property owners who says he's owned his home since 1975 and paying taxes on it has been told by his lender they won't be renewing his mortgage after First Nations land claim. This is just the start.
So where does that leave him? He's owned it since 1975. My landlords have owned this house since 1992. Okay? That's a long time. And they're going to be told that they can't do what they need to do in order to secure their asset? Are they left in limbo? Or is the rug going to be pulled out from underneath their feet? And instead of that $3 million going to Mrs. and Mr. Gill after they sell this house, that $3 million is going into slush fund with whatever native tribe is connected to my area within Surrey in British Columbia, Canada. Because it goes from tribe to tribe to tribe to tribe to tribe, right? From district to district to district, depending on how far and wide the tribe branches out. Okay?
And somebody said in the comments, why does he still have a mortgage if he's owned it?
And they're doing this only because of those frameworks and those accords that were brought in from my awareness, right? It all kind of started in 2015. And then it came in increments. 2015 one was brought in, 2018 another one was brought in, 2021, 22, and around that time came in another one. Laura Lynn was blowing the horn on it and trying to warn everybody about it, and and I think people were trying to challenge the federal government on it, but clearly it didn't work because it's coming in from a foreign entity. A foreign entity that's laid claim on all countries of the world, basically, so that they can follow through on that Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050, and smart cities, and sustainable living, and carbon this and carbon that, and blah, 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 as they're forcing people into homelessness, right? And making it so that they can't have jobs to support their families. They're playing mind games with, 42 million people in the States right now with not having access to adequate food in terms of the amount that they might get. Sure, they might be able to go to a food bank and get a little bit of food there. Sure, they might top off the little EBT card and the little WIC card with half the money, only because that's all they can afford, the federal government that is, to put into that program. So the other half just disappears and gets skimmed off and becomes somebody's slush money. Well, for everybody else, it becomes hush money, and nobody's going to own up to who stole the rest of the money, while the people themselves on the plantation are starving if they're not being pushed out of their houses. Right?
For 50 years. Anyway, that's another question.
Do you have a mortgage on your property here in Richmond?
I do.
Have you spoken to your lender?
I have.
And what have they told you?
They are not renewing it.
Contractors, are you
Oh my Lord. Yeah, they're not renewing it. My landlords, if they heard that, left in limbo at 84 and 86 years old? What do you think? They're going to maybe have a heart attack? Is government going to take responsibility for that? What do you think? No. No, they won't. Because if you take it up with the province, they'll just blame the federal government, passing the buck. Okay? That's all that's going to happen there. They'll just pass the bloody buck.
And here's another one here from the Canadian Press. Councillor says $100 million project denied loan over couch and case. Bank says not a factor. So they're saying it's denied, but the bank's saying it's not a factor. Anyway, links in the...
No, but the Chalwakan tribe will be able to get loans because they're required to take over the infrastructure. If they decide to do what they're doing now, then it goes, deeper. They're going to have to take on the roads, and they're going to have to take on the utilities, and they're going to have to take on basic services like hospitals and, blah, blah, blah. But they don't have the structure of a functioning government like our parliament buildings do, right? So that's the catch-22 where the Aboriginal people themselves become vulnerable to exploitation by these foreign entities who could easily pull out the rug from underneath them if the Aboriginal people can't follow through on the agreement that they made at the time of the first initial stages of what's happening right now to maintain on a, functioning community where it doesn't become a problem. Because as soon as it becomes a problem, that's where the foreign entity comes in to rescue those caught up in that problem at the expense of kicking the natives to the side. Okay? That was the warning a couple, 2-3 years ago, or whenever this subject was hot on topic. More so on BitChute, not much on YouTube, because that's too close to truth. Right?
Description for that one, you can read it fully. Major breaking. 175 homes affected by the couch and land claim are unsellable. Private home sales in the area affected by the new native title in Richmond, BC can now only proceed with buying/selling with the consent of the couch and nation.
Yeah, they have to get permission. And then what? Pay a fee to the tribe? Okay, maybe.
Nation's lawyer. So supposedly the lawyer said this. Wow, that's crazy. Yep.
So now you got the lawyers involved, which is going to cost more money. You have to fight to be able to have the right to sell what you invested since 1975 into. Okay.
To get again, you can't sell. You don't have the right to sell. You have to go to the couch and people, the lawyer said, and do. Supposedly, I don't know if this is true, but this is what this person's claiming, table salt here. 15 First Nation claim ownership of the city of Richmond, and there they have.
What, 15 people? Is that it? Because there's not a lot of natives out here. 3%, 2% of all of Canada, speckled across Canada all over the place. That's not a lot of people. But if you notice how powerful they are now, but that only happened because of that foreign entity. That's all. That's the only reason it's happening. With a government in Ottawa that signed on with it because of that Schwab's young leaders, right? Because don't forget, Trudeau is a young leader, okay? He was one of those young leaders that was groomed by Schwab for that global agenda, okay? So yeah, it was a given. It was a slam dunk, right? In terms of those frameworks and accords and whatever, that type of legislation, of foreign legislation coming over, infiltrating our federal government, and now it's branching out to all the provinces and it's going into action, right? And people, who maybe were aware of it 2, 3, 4 years ago as it was coming to the surface, forgot about it because ain't nobody been talking about it. And if they are, they're probably up on BitChute or someplace like that where they're not getting views, right? Because YouTube would definitely shadow ban and quite possibly delete the videos, depending on how much and how you say it, or maybe even the content creator. It depends. It depends how close you get to the truth and how you call out your government for the corruption, whether it's on a provincial level or on a federal level, right? Because YouTube is not geared for the everyday people, even though they say YouTube, you as in you as an individual. No, it's corporate propaganda. Yeah, that's what it is, for sure. So they're going to protect government first before they protect the people. And that's another thing my videos show over the years. And that's why I'm continued still to this day being shadow banned. Even though I pump out videos regularly, whether on YouTube in terms of this with the camcord and upload the video, or whether it's through live stream. It doesn't matter, right? But I'm just finishing my book. This is my vlog book, video blog book. So, until I can't do no more, I'll just keep doing.
All 5 Cowichan nations see below. And they did an AI search there, and here they all are listed. And this is not the only person that's saying this.
So 5 First Nations currently have a claim to parts of Richmond. The Chalkan tribe, something First Nation, so-and-so tribe, the Halibut First Nation, and the Lake Sun First Nation, as all 5 nations are part of the, I don't know how to pronounce that, nation. Again, you're dealing with 2 to 3% of the total population of all of Canada here. Okay?
By the way. So from Bratney, friendly reminder that the Cowichan decision in Richmond is just the tip of the iceberg. Only 8 nations in BC signed a treaty that ceded land. 95% of British Columbia is on no treaty land, where nations never ceded any land or title rights to the Canadian government. Everything is at risk. A Richmond Conservative MLA says Cowichan decision has her feeling like she's moving backwards towards her colonial experience in Hong Kong, where one never truly owned their property under the influence of communist China. I love this lady. Anyway, I'm not going to play it for you, but she's pretty passionate in that speech. I did watch it. And it doesn't just stop in Richmond, BC, by the way. First Nation files lawsuit demanding Aboriginal title over lands in Western Quebec. And this was just on October 29th, this story here. And you can see here, an Algonquin First Nation has filed a claim.
And that's funny because Quebec, well, it's not funny, right? But Quebec, for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. Now, I don't know a lot of politics around it. All I know is Quebec has always wanted to be its own little country. It's always been wanting to separate from Canada and just be a French state of its own, standalone French state. So I can only imagine their heads reeling with this. If you notice, they went to Quebec, from British Columbia, West Coast, to Quebec. Quebec, I don't know, sounds suspicious because, again, Quebec has been fighting hard to separate from Canada and become its own nation within a nation, right? And of course, Quebec is a part of Canada, so it's never been successful. But if you notice, they're chipping away at it now with the native people. Okay.
Quebec Superior Court over large swaths of territory across the west of the province in an effort to address what it described as historic injustices against its peoples. And it goes on. Anyway, links in the description for this one. Another one from Drea Humphrey. Land grabs another BC city.
Oh, well, why doesn't somebody feel sorry about what happened to Uncle John and how he was medically kidnapped and had his money robbed, you know, and people were falsely accused as they were hiding evidence and, you know, putting up with roadblocks with crooked judges and yada yada. What about Shimei? You know, where's her rights and what happened to her body and how it all happened and the big cover up around. And same thing with Sierra and, like, you know, a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to natives. It really, really is. Because none of my kids were like, well, Sierra was an addict, fair enough, but she got addicted to drugs, introduced to drugs when she was 13. Not her fault. Okay, and it was methamphetamine. Not her fault. That was a direct target against a vulnerable youth that took one hit of that, and that was it. It was game over because that's the type of drug it is. For the majority of people that try it, it becomes a lifelong habit. And then eventually, you know, they bring in other drugs like heroin, yada yada. But at the end of the day, you know, my family, through trial and tribulation, you know, they tried to rise above, I guess you could say, the oppression, and stay positive, and be a productive member in society. Where a lot of Aboriginal people, on the other hand, have fallen victim to systemic racism that goes very, very, very far back, but still, at the end of the day, all of us, regardless, have to still pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and take some responsibility for how we move forward in life without, I don't know. Let's just say it's very political when it comes to Aboriginal people, and it's a two-tiered system that clearly you can see is being manipulated more so than it ever has been. Whether it's a conquer and divide tactic, which in many ways it is, because it's going to breed a lot of animosity, or whether it's a means just to disenfranchise Canadians, whether they were born here or not, but are Canadians, to suit a political agenda on a global level with foreign entities that have a ulterior motive that is insidious. I think it's a little bit of everything in there, don't you? I do.
An Aboriginal title claim has already been in play for Port Coquitlam. I can't even say their name, First Nation, is seeking hundreds of acres, including the Riverview Colony Farms and Gates Park areas. Private land title appears to...
So now they're going after the farms. So you got a lot of Asian farmers, because Richmond, it's mostly Asians, Chinese, Mandarins, those type of people. I'm not saying there's no Punjabis out there and whatever, because there is. But that's more of a Mandarin, Chinese, in around that geographical group of individuals, right?
To not be at stake. Interesting. Canada making global headlines again for telling homeowners that their home and land might be in jeopardy following the Cowichan First Nations land claim, Richmond, BC. And here you have it from the Daily Mail. Homeowners in Pacific Northwest City are warned that their land has now been given to Native tribe and that eviction could soon follow. From Times of India, Canada landowners receive bizarre notice. Your home is not yours because... So that's pretty crazy stuff. So here is a recent article from the Vancouver Sun. I'm using it because of the map in here, and this was talking about, I think it's before, yeah, this is October 19th. Upset in the extreme, Richmond to hold public meeting for homeowners affected by Cowichan Nation land title decision. And whatever, they interview some guy, I guess. There's that letter that went out, if you haven't seen it, the letter that went out from the mayor saying, hey, we got to meet. I think it went out to 150 people or 150 homeowners in that area. Some people said there was 175, but anyway, there's quite a few. And here is the map here. So yeah, check out this map. And I'm going to go to MLS or Realtor.ca right now. But you can see down there Stevenson Street or whatever it is, all the way up to Blundell, I think it is. But we'll see here. We're going to look, and we're going to look in here. So there's two parts to this map. And from what I can understand, you have the one in the black where the Aboriginal title has been awarded, and the green is the claim area boundary. So there's other First Nations and whoever else in there, there's a list of them, that have claims in this land. And this one has already been granted to the Cowichan people in black, but the green is still up for play. They're still, I guess, going through the court. Now, one thing I read about that court case, supposedly it was the longest court case in Canadian history. It started like 11 years ago, 500 and something days they were in court over this. So this was not a quick decision. This has been going on for 11 years, this court case.
Okay.
So it's pretty
So
massive.
that's putting it
This is
at about
probably the biggest
2014.
land.
So this started in 2014. So I say 2015 they came in with the accord. So there was something before that that started the process, and then the accord came in 2015, and then 2018. Then we had the that pandemic thing where everything went on lockdown and everything went upside down, where everything that's bad is good now and everything that's good is bad now. So, like we're in an upside down world there's a lot of bad people running around doing bad things. Let's just put it that way. With nobody being held to account.
Entitles claim that's ever impacted Canada, and it's just getting started, as someone mentioned in that post.
It's just getting
All right,
started.
So here
I believe
is
that.
the area here. Now you can see, from what I can tell, it goes right up on this right here, this Highway 99 or whatever. It goes right up and over up to maybe Westminster and comes back down, and the places in here. But there is
So are these homeowners now going to be paying this tribe, whatever district and wherever, right? Are they, instead of paying a mortgage, are they just going to be paying rent on something that they basically already own, but not anymore because now they're paying rent, right? And it's subject to rent increases? Okay. Do you honestly think people are going to settle for that? Talk about going mad in terms of, like, insane as a homeowner, having to live with that in your later years in life, right?
There's a good few places in here. Now, I looked earlier, and
Are Aboriginal people going to become the new property developers? And where are they going to get their investment from? Because if they don't keep up with the utilities, the roads, and those kind of things, the infrastructure of that community, the big bad wolf might come in to the country and swoop it all up and kick the natives off to the side and say, well, sorry, you couldn't keep up with the pace, so now we're taking over. Because that was the agreement. That was the agreement. But First Nation people, they're not thinking about that. Hell no. This is a land grab, okay? 2 to 3% of the general population of Canada is going for a land grab based on something that was written in some foreign country with a bunch of people that don't speak English properly, okay?
the week or last week, I think it was. And there was more places listed. So a lot of them have been delisted off the...
And went to Schwab's school so that they could become a young global leader. Yeah, okay.
the market here. But yeah, let's...
And what, help people? what, only 2 to 3% of the population? What happened to the other 97% of the population? Where do you plan on shipping them off to once you evict them from their homes that they've been paying into for years and years and years? Or what if they own their home straight out now and all they pay is taxes and they don't even have to remortgage? Oh, they're not allowed to sell. So where do you plan on shipping them to? United States of America? As if the United States wants them. They can't even afford to look after their own people right now. They don't need Canadians crossing over the border broke as a skunk with no place to go outside of maybe someone like me. And even then, I'm a burden if I cross over because I'm blind, I can't work, right? I'm dependent, or I'm a dependent refugee, right? You know what I'm saying? If I want to get away from the corruption of Canada, okay? Because that's still on the table. You never know. Don't fold your hand until you have to. And even then, make sure you got a couple of aces up your sleeve.
Let's check this out here and see what we got here. And there's a mix. There's a lot of industrial and commercial places, but here's some houses here, as you can see. Let's click on this here. Look at this place. $6.3 million. Yeah. Another one for $10 million. So there's some pretty nice places in here. Another one, 5.9 million, 3.8 million. Yeah. And it goes on here. There's, 6.2. So a lot of really nice places. Look at this one. There's a deal, 1.5 million here. Let's check this out. So yeah, this is, again, supposedly included in that land claim, in that area, that boundary. So I did a quick Grok search just to see what Grok could find, pretty much the search engine at this point. Where in the world has Aboriginal title been granted over private property ownership? And here's some examples here.
It came in from overseas.
One was in Brazil here, and you can see Brazil's 1988 Constitution, Article 231, recognizes Indigenous peoples' original rights to lands they have traditionally occupied, concept analogous to Aboriginal title. These rights are considered inherent and predate colonization, and the federal government must demarcate and protect them as Indigenous territories. Any private titles or occupation on such lands are declared null and void if they conflict with Indigenous rights. And so this is crazy. Now, there's more going on. I've seen some other appeals, I think it is, in 2025, and I think they took them back now, from what I understand. But, here's the examples. Check this out. And these are from Brazil here. 2009, the Supreme Court upheld a demarcation of 1.7 million hectare indigenous territory in the Roraima state for the, I can't even say these people's names, and other groups, non-indigenous rice farmers and ranchers, many with private titles dating back decades, were evicted. The court ruled indigenous rights prevailed, with compensation limited to some small holders. So evicted and very little compensation by the looks of it there. There's another one here in the Yanomami territory. I can't even say these words. I'm going to skip them. 1992, large areas claimed by miners and farmers with private deeds were nullified and returned to the Yanomami people. Other cases, anyway, it goes on.
Okay, yeah, well, they're not First Nation people, though, right? So, just keep that in mind here, okay? I'm just saying.
Examples, right? So these are all...
So obviously somebody decided to write something up based on these past issues that altered the landscape, okay, and changed ownership.
All examples where the private landowners were evicted. They were given title by the government, by whoever it was, by the country, and they were evicted from these lands. South Africa, other notable mentions, Colombia, Ecuador, Paraguay. So no Western or First World, but these are a lot of South American places. But I think Canada, it almost looks like this is the first in like the Western world that's happened.
Well, it's because the United States didn't adopt the Accord, that's why.
The UN Indigenous recognition thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much this plays. Canada has, from what I've read, has taken it more into their, and adopted it into their lawmaking process, where other people just recognize it. They actually haven't implemented it, but it looks like Canada is going full... Yeah.
When I signed up with TELUS to get a little security system out here, some guy came to my door, high pressure sale, blah, 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 get your little security camera, get this, that, sign now, sign up now, we'll hook you up now. And I'm like, oh, okay, because, Tamika Johnson's stalking my yard, right? So anyway, all right, so I'm supposed to go online, right? And, agree or do something. Click yes and, blah, 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 right? And, get an account, right? So I can access my services. They had this whole section all written up in regards to what this dude's talking about. And that I had to agree to whatever it was that was written on the behalf of, I guess, First Nation people, and whatever it was they wanted me to acknowledge. But I told them no. I said, forget it. Cancel my account. Cancel my account. And I did. I just canceled it. Yeah, because it didn't make any sense to me. It just didn't make any sense to me. You're a corporation. You're not in bed with a small portion of a population that, right? There's rights, there's privileges, but there's also limitations, okay? And ain't nobody owns me or my family. I don't care if they're Punjabi, freaking Chinese, freaking Eleanor Gilding, who's as white as can be in the Catholic Church with her crew, or freaking Native people. Nobody owns me and my family. That's what I fight against. Okay? Talking about an intrusion, right? I was born in Canada. My kids were born in Canada, right? I fought the good fight. I gave up a lot to try and fight the good fight with community activism, community wellness, all this other crap. And as for other people, I don't necessarily see them fight the good fight. I don't care what ethnic group they come from. And if you're not fighting the good fight for the community as a whole, only for yourself, basically, then that's a problem in my mind. Okay? I don't care who you are. You don't own me and you don't own my family. Right? And if you want to run me off your land, well, then I guess I become a refugee to a rotten, stinking, freaking stupid country. How about that one? Okay? That's thoroughly 100% corrupt. With, I guess, you guys now leading the pack. Basically.
Team on it and actually has using this as a guideline or more than a
do anything for money.
Guideline at this point. But yeah, it's getting pretty serious out there, and a lot of people are going to be very skeptical right now moving forward, especially in BC. It seems like Quebec too. They're starting their disputes. So this is
it's going to end up being Canada-wide because it was written for all of Canada. Okay. In the Yukon, the interior, everywhere. It's going to be everywhere. You watch and see, give it another 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah. Like I said, where do they plan on shipping everybody? Where are they going to put us?
I would say, the situation. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that they will win on appeal, the landowners in BC, or do you think this is just...
Well, in my opinion, if they do, it would only be temporary. Because you're not just dealing with a normal courthouse, okay? And not only are you dealing with federal politics, but you got the overseers on the plantation, which are those corporate entities outside of Canada who have a higher agenda and are just moving the pawns on the board, right? You move your pawns. The natives are just the pawn to bring in the greater agenda where the foreign entity can come in and take over after the natives basically fail at the agreements that they made in order to manage these land grabs that they're taking over, because they just won't have the infrastructure to do it properly. That's what these foreign entities are banking on. That's why it's written into the contract. If you F up, that's it. You lose your spot in life, and we're coming in and we're taking it over, and you will own nothing because now we're running the show. But before we can come in and take the show, we have to give you a chance to do it. And so therefore we're going to use your ego and your need to grab land and grab power and grab, I guess, finances. Somewhere along the line there's going to be some finances coming in order to build a road or put in a power line, or right. It's not just simply take over houses. It's taking over the whole community. right? And if you're evicting people, what? You're not going to be held to account with them now being homeless, even though they're, 72 years old? They've been living in their house since 1975, and now all of a sudden they're homeless, like my 75-year-old neighbor over here who's been renting her house for 25 years. So the renter becomes homeless at 75. As a homeowner at age 75 also becomes homeless. Talk about a backwards world.
It's the start of a big movement. There's going to be a lot of unsettled homeowners and displaced homeowners, evicted homeowners in Canada with what's going on right now. Anyway, as always, leave your comments.
This is where you're going to have to take it to, those outside courts? I don't know what they're called. It's a court that's out of Canada, right? For human rights and all that crap. Right? Yeah. Okay, and to think that my son and his wife, Marina, want to buy a house in Canada. Yeah, okay.
We pretty much take it all.
Oh, my
Fridges,
Lord.
and dishwashers, dressers, drawers,
As soon as you
couches,
turn it on.
mattresses, bed
Come on,
frames,
shut
concrete,
up.
things like that. Same
Catch
day
that
notice
mouse.
or 3 weeks.
Skip. Okay, so this is Rebel News. Now, I haven't watched Rebel News for a long time. Under the Fair Use Act. Not that Rebel News would care, because it's just, promotion is promotion, right? Richmond, BC, landowners blast Liberal NDP. Okay, Liberal is the federal government. NDP, New Democratic Party, is the provincial government of British Columbia, Canada, for Chalkan tribe land grab. Okay, because that's what it is. Rebel News, this was done 2 days ago. Okay, 10 days ago. 10 days ago. How many views did they get? 69K. Alright, so let's listen to this one since we're on this topic. Okay? Now, it may not affect you yet. If you're in Canada, it's getting close. Let's put it that way. If you're in the United States of America, not so much. Because the United States has been trying to hold on to, from what I understand, I could be wrong. I'm not saying there's no backroom deals going on in there, because there is, a whole lot of them. They're just coming in through a different back door, that's all, right? But they didn't sign up with that immigration accord, right, where, it was, blah and blah, right, like the way Canada did and other countries did. And I don't think they signed up with this framework where, yada yada yada, right? Because I haven't heard, nothing stands out in my memory, okay, other than maybe being balked at, right? And, bypassing and not voting for it, or, right? Because you have to vote for it at these congregations that they have outside the country, right? In terms of, they don't meet per se over here in our country. They meet somewhere halfway across the world as they lay claim to our country, because they've elevated themselves through whatever it is that they created. It's like a secret society, only it's in the open, right? Okay. Come on.
It's Canada. Loyalty to identity politics has helped take us from land acknowledgements to land appropriation, and you're supposed to own nothing and be happy about that. At least, that could be the near future for British Columbians and beyond. I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News with more on the Richmond land grab story.
This is what the band already had given to them in August. This is the condo units here along the Fraser River, and now this is the outline that they're going after, which includes City of Richmond land too. So that's why they have a huge stake in this. We bring the immigration, so Indians come here and they are instantaneously Canadians, but we as Canadians have been here for generations and we don't count. We have to fight for our Canadian.
Okay, So you heard that, right? I'm just going to run it with this. I'm just going to run this video. It is what it is. Hopefully I won't get well, I'll get shadow banned. That's a given. Hopefully it won't get removed for one reason or another, just because maybe I said 2 words in the wrong kind of way. All right, it probably won't be monetized. It will be ad unfriendly. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, seriously, YouTube is still coming in with they tagged another video from 2012 with some song that, is now the guy that wrote, well, he's dead now, right? But whoever, they don't, they made it so I can't monetize on that. The video still plays. And then I did it up, Uncle John. Yeah, Uncle John. The Haunting of Uncle John and Shimei Chorney. They made that one ad unfriendly. Why? Because I spoke truth? Because I called out the corporations for what they did to innocent lives? What was so unfriendly about it? I mentioned Fraser Health Authority, CIBC Bank, provincial government of British Columbia, Canada, yada yada yada, and all of a sudden it became. That's what I mean. YouTube covers up the corruption by any means necessary when they can get away with it. So, here she brought up Indians from India, who are namely Punjabis, trying to create their own Khalistan country in British Columbia, Canada. Okay? As well as the Hindus, which is another group of individuals that come from India, but are not the predominant immigrants when it comes to Indians from India. Let me wind this back, okay? Because right now, they're getting all the perks. While Canadians, whether rich or poor, it seems, or the middle class, we're all being kicked to the curb. All of us.
They're going after, which includes City of Richmond land too. So that's why they have a huge stake in this. We bring the immigration, so Indians come here and they are instantaneously Canadians, but we as Canadians have been here for generations.
So is she saying that Punjabis, Hindus, people like that, as an ethnic group from India, have all the perks and all the privileges and all the rights, but us Canadian-born people don't? Is that what she's saying?
And we don't count. We have to fight for our Canadian citizenship, for owning land. It is a spiral that is going out of control. It is the Liberal government. The NDP is not helping. I also sent a big message out on Facebook to Mr. Ebby to say, you need to get this government under control, because the citizens of British Columbia deserve more. They deserve more than what we're getting. And if it was his family home that was being challenged, and the thought of somebody coming and taking that, I can guarantee you this would not be happening.
Yeah, but we got all this laundering of money through all these condo developments, luxury condos, right? Where that is bankrupting tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of British Columbians right across the board, regardless of their ethnic heritage, as investors into those condo schemes. Okay? As 40% of them, 60%, depending on the area, sit empty and not moving on the market. But yet, you got people being flushed out of their houses, like my house, right? For one reason or other, whether it's for rent gouging purposes, right? Or to tear down the house to build another ghost building. Yeah. Like, this is a sickness.
The police themselves say going after the property of licensed, law-abiding firearms owners is not going to work.
What the heck is
Listen
this?
to this.
Oh, geez.
And what we find in the city...
Okay, that's another topic.
In August, the Supreme Court of Canada shocked Canadians and the future of land ownership rights in the province of British Columbia by giving nearly 8 kilometers of land in the...
Yeah, well, has been coming since, well, a long time. Like, it's, right, something started in 2014 in Canada. But the accord that really started to stamp this stuff home was introduced in 2015, was probably introduced probably in 2010. Who knows? Because the corruption goes back far and wide, right?
City of Richmond, BC, Aboriginal title. Now, you've probably seen that letter that's more recently been circulating online, showing that it isn't stopping there, my friends. Oh no. Because while the other parties in that landmark Cowichan Tribes vs. Canada decision are appealing that ruling, so is the Cowichan Tribes. They're not happy. They want more. Today,
3,500 members? Is that how big the tribe is? What's the population of Richmond? I'd like to know. With 3,500 members, we are the large single First Nation band, the largest. So the largest band, okay, tribe, in British Columbia, Canada, it's 5,000, sorry, with 5,500 members. And that would be babies included, I would think. Okay? Maybe? I don't know. We are the largest single First Nation band in British Columbia by population. All right. So there's, I think, 4.6 million individuals in British Columbia, Canada. So now you've got, I don't know what the percentage is on that, but it's very small, running a show. So where are they getting all this money to fight this shit in court? Where's the contingency fund on that? Is the province providing the money for them to fight the homeowners in court and do all the legal beagle stuff? Or is it the federal government that's propping it up? Because somebody's funding it, right? That would be my question. Who's funding this? Is it both the province and the federal government? Or is it that foreign entity that's funding it? The one that's just licking its chops.
who is the Cowichan Tribes? They're not happy. They want more. Today I speak with Angela, who is a Richmond landowner. Not just a landowner, she is the landowner who's behind that letter that has been circulating. It was sent to her, signed by the mayor of Richmond, warning her that now her property and her neighbor's property on that land, well, they could be affected by this Richmond land grab attempt too. But first, let me be clear. Her property and others affected by this Richmond land grab attempt is fee simple title property under the Land Title Act, which is supposed to be the strongest and most complete form of private land ownership recognized in our country. And if this ruling sticks, may I remind you that 100% of British Columbia's land is currently being claimed by many bands who don't even agree with each other about whose land is whose.
Exactly. Because they've been given a green light with funding to do it from probably the federal government and within the provincial government through some portfolio. Yeah. Talk about turning into a green-eyed monster. Power. Holy crumb.
Oh, and when I said that all parties are appealing the decision, I don't mean landowners like Angela. Silly me. Why would that be the case? It's just their homes, right? No. Despite the Cowichan Tribes filing to claim their land back in 2013, 11 years.
Okay, 2013. Now instead of 2015, we went to 2014, and now we're into 2013. So there's something in there that came from overseas, from some foreign entity that is stoking the fire. Okay, planting the seed. Something foreign instigated it. Because it's like, stacking up the cards, right? Building a hand, right? And now that they got a full hand of cards to play, they're now starting to play their hand as they're being funded by somebody.
And her property neighbors just found out about this like you did.
Do you think poor Native people can afford to do this on their own? Of course not.
The landowners have no say. But the Cowichan tribes do, and that say is mostly stories. Stories that have been passed down for generations. You know, kind of like unmarked grave stories. I digress.
Okay, our CMP finds no evidence of murders. Clandestine burials at residential schools. Now, here I tend to disagree based on my own experiences of what has happened to my own family and witnessing it for myself, as well as taking shit to exposure when it came to proving that Shimei was illegally embalmed on a hospital bed for 9 days. Okay, and that, the only reason that happened was because her organs were illegally harvested and sold on the black market. To whom? Well, to the ones that have money. There's that supply and there's that demand. And the same is true for Sierra. Okay? Uncle John was a different kind of grab. It was a money grab, right? And he paid in his life. He paid with his life for that to happen. Just like Shimei was a money grab, but it was just a different kind, right? So, just with what happened and how the cops covered all of it up, it didn't matter if it was Uncle John, right? Shimei, Sierra, whatever. Oh yeah. So I'm not too sure about this. Okay? Because I've seen the dark side of humans. And I've seen the dark side of that entity that poses as human. Alright? But I digress.
There will be more reports from me on this subject at our special website where you have a petition you can sign to take action. It's called stopundrip.com. You can also learn about UNDRIP, which is one of the key contributors to what I call reconciliation overreach, which, if you haven't noticed yet, is a problem. Let's hear from Angela. Angela, thanks for having me in your lovely home here. But it's not a lovely story about some of the land you own that we're going to talk about. I want you to take us back to when you first received this letter in front of you and what was going through your mind when you read what you read.
I think it was...
So, are my landlords protected because they're Indian? From India? What? Are they saying that the natives aren't going to mess with the Punjabis because it'd be too big of a fight? And they're just going after poor white trash that happen to own a little bit of property? Ooh, like, seriously.
Shock at first. We were literally just up at the other house, and I was coming out the door, and this fellow in his car came up, walked over and said, "This is for you." It was unmarked because, of course, it just says to registered owner. But I was like, oh, what the heck is this? Looked at it, thought it was kind of a joke in a way, even though it said the city of Richmond on it, but it literally is stating that the property that is outlined in this, which if you see here, this is what they were already given in August to what I think that's happened by the Supreme Court. And so now the tribe has come back and outlined a larger area in green, of which there's 4 condo buildings.
So who's funding this? Who's funding the lawyers to draw up all the paperwork? Is the tribe itself funding it and digging into their own pockets? Or are they getting federal funding through grants and, transfer payments, or is it the province?
That sit there, and they are fee simple.
I doubt the native people themselves are paying for it. Heck no. Because a lot of them, I'm not saying all of them, they're dependent on the government. There's many of them still live on reserves. Are they being treated fairly on reserves? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they don't necessarily have a lot of money to be pushing this kind of a political agenda forward with such aggression in terms of, we weren't satisfied with this little plot, now we want it even bigger, as they're, scoping out the neighborhood that they haven't captured yet.
People owned. They were not on leased land. We purchased the condo outright, And now we're saying that the Cowichan Band is making a claim on it.
It's so much to unpack here, and you're absolutely...
So you need to figure out what the population is of Richmond, which would probably be very large. Okay, 500,000 or more, I'm sure. And you got 5,500 natives laying claim to that district, basically, in increments.
Right. So the black zone is what the Supreme Court has ruled is now Aboriginal title. And if there was any private landowners in there, which there were, that was deemed to have been a defective decision to basically give that title. Now that's on appeal. All parties involved, not landowners, all parties involved are disputing this, and the Cowichan tribes is disputing to say, hey, no, we claim a lot more, which is what the green zone is and is where you're a condo owner.
Yes.
I just bought a popular face cream at the Shoppers Drug Mart, and I checked to see what the first...
I have to turn on the volume.
It's a little bit about how long you've had the condo there, why you chose that specific place, and what it's like there. What's special about it?
Well, it's a beautiful setting. It's right on the Fraser River. So I know that some people may not appreciate that, but this is not our principal residence. We bought it as a investment for our retirement. So we've had it, we bought it right from brand new. So, my goodness, I think it's 13 years, 14 years, I can't remember. But right from brand new, I've had a renter in it the entire time. Never was anything mentioned to us that this was on any kind of disputed land. That was never, ever disclosed. So this is such a surprise, it's almost shocking. So yes, we don't live in this property. It is a...
That's because the bee in the bonnet wasn't put there until the agenda changed. Because this isn't being instigated by Canadian people. It's an outside entity that's fostered it and pushing it forward.
Rental property, so a lot of people think, well, she has more than she needs, but that's really not the point. The point is that a band can come in and make claim to something from 450 years ago because they picked some blackberries on the side of the road. And it was passed down. The information was passed down from... There's no written, just so everyone knows, there is no written claim to this land. It's all from generation to generation to generation that grandma tells that they picked...
It's okay for Andre to grow up to be a poor boy and own nothing and have nothing because he's just, a poor boy, right? You know what I'm saying? Right? But it's not okay for a poor native to grow up and not have anything because for some reason... I don't know. The dynamics is different, right? I don't know. Their DNA is I don't know. What makes them special and separate from everybody else outside of what she's saying? I wouldn't say it that way, picking blackberries, but yeah, I guess you can say Andre grew up picking blackberries too. So if Andre grew up picking blackberries, shouldn't he be allowed to lay claim to something around here? I mean, come on. He was born here. Right? He doesn't want to leave this house because he's happy, even though it's been frustrating and whatnot. This is his home, right? And, I got videos with me picking walnuts and black walnuts and English walnuts and blueberries and, while people are criticizing me that I'm, running around acting like a native with my grandson, teaching him about wildlife and raccoons and all this other stuff, but for whatever reason, Andre's destined to be poor for the rest of his life because because of his skin color. Basically. Yeah, basically.
Blackberries along the Fraser River there, and so that's why it's their land now.
It's very shocking. Your oral testimony is what you're referring to,
yes.
and historical documents, but that don't go back to what you're talking about. So I see what you're saying there. And something else stands out to me when you're saying you bought this property around 13 years ago, you've owned it. You shouldn't apologize for it needing to be for your retirement, especially in today's economy. That's just called being...
You're giving somebody else a place to live.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, not everybody can own, and that's the way life is. So if you take away all the landlords, where is everybody living?
Absolutely. Now, but you said 13 years, and this case that we're now seeing the product of, that's been going on for 11 years. When did you find out your property was at stake?
4 days ago. Literally, it's Monday. We got this letter on Thursday. I had not a clue. Not a clue.
So what goes through your head when you're like, all of this has been happening behind our backs about
So what
our
they
land?
need to do, Nan, considering what they're saying, if this is going to be going on for 11 years, right, then they need to go back into the government at the time, 10 years further back, and look at the legislation that was being brought in from those outside entities from other countries under the disguise of, I don't know, global leadership, right? And find out where it all started, because it's in increments. The legislation has been brought in increments. That's why it's happening now. They had to bring in the one in 2015. They had to bring in the one in 2018, right? Because I read them. I read a part of them. And then they brought in the immigrants through that whatever framework or whatever legislation they formulated from someplace else out of the country. And everything else that they're doing to accomplish a goal.
And it might be deemed that it's Aboriginal title.
Well, you chalk it up to everything that we know. Mainstream media is filtered by the government. They tell us what we want to know. We're conditioned to know what they want us to know. Because immediately when I got this, I thought it was like, is this actually true? And then you start going online, and then, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's true, because it was talked about 2, 3, 4 years ago. It was a hot topic. Maybe, like I said, not so much on YouTube, because they like to hide that kind of crap, right? You know, by any means necessary if they have to. But it was like well talked about on freaking BitChute. Laura Lynn. Oh yeah, her and her crew, and people like her.
You start digging up information, and then you hear of this UNDRIP, and I'm like, this has actually been in the works for so long, and we as Canadians have no idea. But yeah, it's very scary, the unknown. Obviously, I don't know anything yet. We're going to a meeting at the City Hall
28th.
on the 28th of October. So hopefully I'll have some more answers then, and hopefully I can post about that when we kind of get some answers. But do I have any real firm feeling that the mayor is going to do anything? Or can he? Let's face it, it's the Supreme Court that makes this decision, and the first Supreme Court said, yes, it's all yours.
Well, and not to mention, the city of Richmond, like many other cities, have been declaring being...
And that's because it's already in the Parliament. And the Parliament, I hate to say it, is infested with devil worshippers. With whoever is representing the natives when they're doing their budget speech, right? And they come into the chambers with the red carpets that Uncle John used to vacuum and clean and da-dee-dee-da. They're coming in with their devil shines. Already seen it. With their little symbols in the background. Right there in the Parliament buildings. So you can't be surprised. Okay? You just can't be surprised. Even Rebel News if you ever want to take the time to look at the things that are in the background, you'd be surprised what you might see in regards to that subliminal messaging. In regards to what side of the fence they stand on. Is it the dark side or is it the light side? It's deceiving with rebel news. But if you look past and you see what they've got in the background where your, mind sees it, but your eyes don't necessarily register it with your conscious brain, but your unconscious brain picks it up, right? Well, that's the same thing with what's going on in our parliament buildings, right? Which is sad, really sad. So I try to stay away from it and not get too all worked up about it because, I'm not trying to run with no devils here. And it's very hard to fight them. It really is. Because there's too many of them. Devil worshippers, that is. Right?
On unceded land this whole time, we hear
devil keepers. Right? Evildoers. Whatever you want to call them. Satanists. Right?
that mantra all the time. We see it in emails. We know kids, students are being told to do that, to basically admit that they're on unceded stolen land.
Yeah, like I said, freaking tell us. Come to my door, pressure me to sign up with their security, right? I sign up. Next thing you know, they want me to agree to whatever it is that these tribes are expecting. And I'm like, no. I don't think so. That's not what I'm signing up for here.
And this whole time, we hear that mantra all the time. We see it in emails. We know kids.
Yeah, unceded territory. We see it.
Kids, students are being told to do that.
Yep.
To basically admit that they're on unceded stolen land.
No.
How, if any way?
No, I was born here. I walked the good walk. I'm a survivor. Natives want to call themselves survivors. Oh, I'm a survivor of this and a survivor. Well, you know what? I have my survivor stories too. I've been through some really crappy shit throughout my life. And I didn't let it break me and put me to a bottle, turn me into an addict, or anything like that. I don't go around beating up on people, disrespecting people, whatever, okay? I got better manners than that, okay? You know what I'm saying? Not saying I don't feel sorry for myself sometimes. You know, everybody does that, right? Not saying that, but I like to think that I, after all these years, no matter the circumstances and what I've been through, okay, and I've been through a lot, I'm still fighting a good fight for my community. Do I like Canada? Hell no. It's a rotten, stinking, stupid country, aka welcome to the new Congo, because it's so corrupt. But I'm stuck here. But that doesn't give other people to start knocking me around right? That doesn't give other people the right to start knocking me around any more than I've already been knocked around when they themselves can't even get their own acts together. Okay? I'm still fighting a good fight. Right? I'm hanging on to a foundation that nobody gives a rat's ass about. Because it has the word new nations. Nations. Unity in it. Forget the unity and forget the new. It's the nations that become the problem for the native people because they seem to think they own that word too. Because I've dealt with native people saying, oh, you can't use that name, new nations, because we own nations. No, you don't own nations. It's just a freaking word that came out of this freaking dictionary. Nations was Canada and the United States. New nations, unity. The unity part was not for First Nation people to come together and terrorize everybody so they can do land grabs. No, it was for Canada and the United States to come together and bring community activism to a whole new height where all people could benefit. Didn't matter what their ethnic heritage was or their, basically income. Right? I mean, obviously, if you're ultra rich, you don't need food. Okay, but if you're like middle class and you're struggling in today's term, it would be nice to get a little food hamper delivered to your door only because somebody cared about you, right? You know, feed grandma. If you don't want it, at least feed your grandma, feed the grandma and the grandpa in the house. You know, give it to the kids, right? You know, oh, you know, we're not used to receiving money because we're the middle class and we're supposed to be holding down the fort. Yeah, I know that. But at the end of the day, you're human like everybody else. And sometimes when somebody just gives you a little something, it makes you feel good and it brightens your spirit so that you keep on with the good fight. And try and maintain with those steps forwards versus being pushed backwards. Talk about being pushed backwards 20 steps. This woman's being pushed back thousands of steps. Welcome to the new Congo. Over blackberries.
Has your
450-year-old blackberries yet.
opinion on those land acknowledge mantras changed after what's happening to you now?
Oh, they haven't changed, 'cause I've disagreed with those from the second. I work and volunteer whenever you go to a meeting. You know that every time you say that statement, you've already given that land. If you're admitting that you're already sitting on unceded territory, then you've already admitted that what we're sitting on and standing on is not ours to keep.
Okay, well, I'm glad I didn't admit to it then, because I don't. I could outwalk a lot of natives. I've had it worse than the natives have had it, for crying out loud. And I managed. I've survived. I'm going out the door with nothing. I've been bankrupt, you know how many times? Too many times to count. I've lost daughters to death through corruption, right? I've seen what the public union sector is about for those that are corrupt within that system, right? You know what I'm saying? And my kids don't have no freaking future like everybody else around town these days, except for a few select, whatever, whether they're criminals, the devil's keeper, or whether they're just lucky to escape being targeted, okay, because not everybody is a crook in Canada, but there's a lot of them. So, you know, no way.
So why do we say that?
And as soon as you do that, then you become targeted. Oh, yeah. Somebody's going to retaliate. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's not already retaliated against her. Yeah.
All you're doing is already giving them permission to come at you. Nobody stole this land, not to my knowledge. Things happen in history. We're here. And it's mine. Like, this will be such a, what do you call it when it's like not a step?
Whatever the fight is with the native people it was with the federal government, ultimately. Now, whether the federal government wants to offload onto the individual provinces and territories to pay out the natives for whatever it is that they think that they are deserved, then that's a whole different ball game, right? So if the native comes first, this Cowichan band with their 5,500 members, they come and they take the federal government and say, okay, you owe us $2 billion because of this, and this, pay up. And if the federal government, well, I don't know about that, we'll pay $1 billion. It's the province that's going to have to pay the other $1 billion, and then give them their $2 billion and let them go buy their own land, versus coming in thinking that they can lay claim right across the province, because that's what's going to end up happening here. And the broader they get, the broader the scope with the land grab, the more responsibility, and then that's when they will falter. That was predicted. Okay, that's the trap. That's right. They don't care about the trap. They care about the greed, and they care about the power, and they care about the wealth that they think they're going to gain from it, whether it's personal, because a lot of people within that ethnic group are just as corrupt as any other ethnic group, with those that rise with power and finances, right? You're always going to skim off a little something and have their Swiss account somewhere else, kind of thing. That's what I'm trying to say, right? But sooner or later, they're not going to be able to keep up with the utility in terms of providing the hydro lines and keeping up with the roads and the water mains and this and that and everything else that a government is supposed to do, because ultimately they're going to have to be the government. But right now they're sucking off the government's tit to basically do what they're doing, because without the government tit, they couldn't do it, because they're broke. They have no money. They rely on the federal government to support them. The majority of them, not all of them, but a lot, and I don't even want to put it majority because I can't say majority, but a lot of them, they're on welfare. And if they're not on welfare, they're living on the reserve. Okay? Right? I mean, obviously there are some people there that are highly educated, yada yada, but at the end of the day, it's not what people think. Because this is just another political ploy. You go send your kid to school, any school in the province of British Columbia, Canada, basically, and you've got Native kids in that school with their special program with this and their special program with that, and your kid wants to join that program because they like the way it sounds and they want to be a part of it, they are denied. And this is Canada. They are not allowed to participate in that program because the funding is designed specifically for the Native child. And I know that for a fact because I had that problem with Shimei. And what it does is it divides the people, right? It divides the people and it keeps the Natives locked in to that, I guess you could say, victim mentality where they feel like something is owed to them, right? And therefore, give me more, give me more, give me more. Yeah. Yeah. And now they want it all. And somebody's funding it.
But when it's
Precedent.
a precedent that you can take just by appealing to the Supreme Court of Canada to take people's homes and...
The Supreme Court of Canada is corrupt. They're bought-off lawyers, bought-off freaking judges, okay? And they're working for somebody else. They're not working for us. They're not. My videos prove that, time after time, when it comes to the Supreme Court. So I'm an idiot to be thinking about filing another lawsuit so I can get John's signature to close some accounts that have been sitting dormant for over 10 years, for crying out loud, due to that corruption within our Supreme Court house.
What they've bought and paid for and worked hard to do and sacrificed for that, and in a stroke of a pen, say it's no longer yours. I don't know, will we be caught?
Well, the taxes that she's been paying all these years, clearly she's middle class because she owns at least 2 properties that we're aware of, for years and years and years and years and years. Right? Her husband probably works, so it's a dual income family that's paying a fair amount of taxes, where those taxes are helping to support those people that are now taking away her house. Because again, I doubt all 5,500 members are working. I'm sure some of them are on welfare or on some form of disability, okay? And the only way they're going to get welfare or disability is by people like this who pay their taxes. Okay? Talk about being backwards and asinine.
Compensated? I have no idea what the... I don't even know what any of this even means at this point for us as homeowners.
Personally, I agree with you as on a personal level. But what would you say to the sector of Canadians that say, oh my goodness, what you're saying is right?
Are the natives going to buy out her property through expropriation on the low ball when it comes to market value? Is that what's going to happen? So her property is worth, we'll say, $3 million? And the natives come and say, well, time to leave. We have to give you a little something in pittance, you know, just a pittance, right? A siphon or whatever they call it. And we're just going to give you $700,000, even though your property is listed for $3 million. Take it. You can't leave it. You don't have a choice. Otherwise, we'll see you in court. Because we have a slush fund that can keep you in court until you're dead. So that by the time you die, you'll be worn out. And the next generation within your family won't want to continue on with the fight. Because you've been fighting for 20 years in court. As they bankrupt you. Because the money is coming someplace else to empower them. So people need to find out where the money is coming from. To even allow these people to do what they're doing. Because they're not pulling into their own pockets, that's for sure. And since they're calling out numbers, Why don't they do an audit and find out how many of these people that are laying claim to all these million dollar properties, 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, 3 million, $10 million properties, especially when you're getting into your farmlands, what's their income and where does it come from? What's their net asset? I'd like to know. And what's the ratio from those that have and those that don't within that 5,500 people?
Racist.
Well, that's not racist. That's not the definition of racism. Thinking another group of people is less than you is racism. I have nothing against Indigenous people. They're lovely. They've got a lot of friends. But that doesn't mean that just because a people lived somewhere many, many, many generations ago, and what happened
that's
then,
like Punjabis moving to British Columbia, Canada in droves since whenever it was they landed into the waters, and the federal government allowed them to come into Canada instead of staying out in the waters, right? That was 100 years ago. So 100 years fast forward, we are where we are today, where the majority of the wealth, in my opinion, is owned by Punjabis, or pretty damn near close, right? They're a very big voting bloc when it comes to politics that's associated to wheeling and dealing when it comes to wealth within the ethnic group as a whole, right? Well, what was I saying? What was I going to say? Oh, I don't know. I lost it. I need to go back. Okay, I need to go back because it's kind of a point that's important, right? So let's just bring this back. Maybe if I hear her say it again, it will trigger my memory. This is not what I wanted to do today, but whatever. It is what it is. I got this meat coming. I'm supposed to be doing fish. I haven't even gotten to the fish because I'm filling up jars. Yeah. Let's go back.
people. They're lovely. They've got a lot of friends. But that doesn't mean that just because a people lived somewhere many, many, many...
Oh, yes, that's right. Okay, so 100 years ago, Punjabis came to the, whatever, federal government kept them out at sea. They had to fight the government to come into Canada as immigrants, yada, yada, yada. Finally, the federal government allowed them to come in. So 100 years fast forward now, they're on the verge of creating their own Palestine state through Punjabis, through Punjab, right? Okay, you got the Khalsa schools and yada yada yada, and it's just something that they're trying to do out here. Okay, it's very political, and so they're getting pretty damn near close to it because everywhere you go, it's Punjabis. At least in my neighborhood, but even in other neighborhoods, they're everywhere. They own the gas stations. They all work in the Walmarts. They flooded the hospitals. They're freaking at your local 7-Eleven. They're all over the place, like working in the grocery stores and just everywhere, right? So, okay, so let's now go another 50 years ahead, 25 years ahead, because mankind, we're dying out, right? Because we're targeted. We're the supply, okay? They're the demand. We're the supply. And people like my kids that are mixed, or maybe black people, or native people, right? And I've said it before, and it's just a fact. So as we slowly but surely die out, as we're being pushed out, one way or whether we're being pushed out of our rental housing, or whether we're being pushed out of our homes, we're being pushed out, or jobs, or whatever, they're moving in, and they're building their new Punjab. It's new India. In 50 and 25, 50 years from now, no matter what they say, they can never lay claim to say, oh, it's always been like this. It's always been little India. There's big India over there across the water, and right here, it's always been like this. There was never no white people running around, and if they were nothing but savages. We got rid of them. We took care of that. We only keep around just a few for the political part of it. But other than that, that's not what Canada is about. Well, it's the same damn thing, right?
generations ago, and what happened then should not be allowed to come full circle hundreds of years later. Can you imagine that happening in the States? It's kind of mind-boggling that the Supreme Court of Canada can make a judgment on land that is for all Canadians.
But it's not the Canadian government that's fueling it. It's from that outside source. The UNDRIP. I wish they would just say what it is. It makes me think UN, United Nations something, something, something. But I don't know what that something, something, something is.
Make a judgment 100% for one side when the other side, which is us, the homeowners, weren't even aware that this was even happening. I mean, we were aware that the city or that the Supreme Court awarded some land in Richmond, and like you said, we all come on, oh, that sucks, but guess what? We were already involved and didn't even know. And we literally got this letter out of the blue. Everyone's taking a deep breath, and so, you know, I know where my heart is. God's got me, so I'm not worried. So my hope is in Jesus, not in this world.
Well, and if we also look at the history, tribes themselves were at war with each other over territories. So
yes, this conversation could literally go on all night because it drives me. It honestly makes me crazy because I think, unfortunately,
Follow the money. Who's funding it? And where did the legislation come from to ultimately have that funding approved? And who do they answer to? The funders, that is. Because they're answering to somebody.
a lot of people don't educate themselves. They eat up the 5 o'clock news like it's dinner, and then they re-spew everything they hear from the CBC. And like, have you done any research at all on anything they're telling you? Because if you did, you might learn something. I think we have to stop being lazy Canadians and start doing some research when we get stuff.
Well, the fact that you know the definition of racism puts you ahead of many people who use that word all the time. So
that's what I'm saying. People, I think, don't even fascism. They throw words out. I'm like, I don't even know if I know the definition of that, but they throw it out like it's nothing.
the only thing we know.
So what happens? They get evicted from their home, and the natives move in. Is that what happens? Or do the natives rent out the houses and make an income? And how do they divvy up that income? Who owns the house? The tribe?
For sure is it means less stability.
Is that what builds a government? Is the rent on those houses that they lay claim to? Or does it go into individual pockets within the tribe?
Would seem for landowners in British Columbia potentially.
Because they're not just going to leave these places empty. Somebody's going to move in after these homeowners are kicked out.
Canada. British Columbia was the first jurisdiction in the entire world to take the UN's aspirational.
Well, yeah, the UN. Exactly. There you go. Because Canada, British Columbia, Canada, is one of the most corrupt freaking provinces in Canada, for crying out loud.
Framework for Indigenous rights.
Framework, you heard it. So I'm on the right path. The UN framework, exactly.
Without including anybody else's rights. And BC said, you know what, we're going to make all of our laws form to that. So that's been part of sort of the shift that we're seeing here. But you're right, we don't know all of the answers. Right. Aubrey bringing more reports on this, like I already have at stopundrip.com. But why don't we end with, what message do you have, or would you have, if you were talking to the city of Richmond directly, or the province, even the federal government, or even the Cowichan tribes themselves, about what you're going through, what this means for your family, what you think it means for Canada?
Yeah, it means the demise of Canada, really. We've been here for generations. And, you know, I saw, this may be totally, you might need to edit this out, but, you know, It's so true that we bring the immigration, so Indians come here and they are instantaneously Canadians, but we as Canadians have been here for generations and we don't count. We have to fight for our Canadian citizenship, for owning land. It is a spiral that is going out of control. It is the Liberal government. The NDP is not helping. I also sent a big message out on Facebook to Mr. Eby to say, you know, you need to get this government under control because the citizens of British Columbia deserve more. They deserve more than what we're getting. And if it was his family home that was being challenged and the thought of somebody coming and taking that, I can guarantee you this would not be happening.
At Rebel News, we don't back down from bringing you the other side of the story, which is why we've warned you about UNDRIP and land acknowledgements and so on, despite every name.
UNDRIP, and land, whatever. So back in the day, a couple, 2-3 years ago, whenever it was, the big uproar, right? I mean, they right along with Laura Lynn, they were talking about it. So I don't know. I want to know what UNDRIP means in terms of UNDRIP. We know it's related to the framework that's connected to the UN, but obviously it was introduced before 2015. Something else was introduced before then to set the stage. Yeah. Okay. So I'd have to Google it. So why don't we just Google it and see what happens? UNDRIP. Let's end it on this. We'll end this video on what it means. Since it's back in the news, or at least on video, people are talking about it now. UN Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People. And when was it written? When was it written? Assembly in 2007. Adopted by the General Assembly in 2007. But that would be probably within the UN nations. United Nations, I should say. Right? Doesn't mean it was adopted into Canada in 2007. It was just something that they started then. Imminent. Implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of. So that's where we're at. And yeah, see? 2021. You see that, right? Where am I? Where's my finger? Oops, sorry. Where's my... Oh, my Lord. Right here. There it is. That's about right. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UN, okay, blah, is about recognizing and respecting the human rights of Indigenous peoples. Well, I'm Indigenous. My family is, we were born here in Canada. Even though it's a crap country, we're still Canadians, I guess you could say. As if anyone wants to be a Canadian these days. Okay, I'm not quite finished this video because I just refreshed the page here. And now we've got Canada land rights are at risk. Here's how to fight back. This was just posted. Where's my finger? There it is. 6 hours ago by Rebel News. Now, before I start this, I want to say,
ready to discover the
well, obviously they're monetized. Okay? So, if they can say it, I can say it. Alright? Under the Fair Use Act. Free publicity on my part. Alright? If reach one, teach one. Okay? Alright. Fight fire with fire. Alright. So, turn that off for a minute. Bring it down to the beginning because, you know, look what happened. Look how shady this shit is. Oh my god. So we're going to bring it to the beginning. Okay, hopefully another ad won't kick in. All right, so before I start, though, this is what I want to say. Marina's parents just bought themselves a little homestead somewhere. Yeah, it's a little further out of the city. I don't think it's too far. But her grandparents apparently own a couple of $1 million worth of property. Some up in the city itself, maybe Burnaby or someplace like that, as well as further out in Shawnigan Lake or some up more into the interior. And they're in their 80s, okay? So this is just the first stages of what's coming. And clearly, Aboriginal people are getting aggressive with it because, you know, they have the funding to push the political agenda forward however they want to interpret it, okay? And you know what they say, ultimate power is ultimate corruption. Well, it's been corrupted already for a long time. So what I'm trying to say is, whatever's going on may at some point trickle itself around to affect people like Marina's parents and grandparents who are property owners, okay? As well as they want to buy a little house for themselves, only they don't really want the burden of me. That we know. So my son, well, you know, if I buy a house, you just get a room. That's it. That's all, Mom, because that's all we can afford. Be lucky you got that. And, well, I don't want to be locked up into a room like a dirty secret. I need more like a rumpus room so I can hang out with the Mari and have my piano. And, you know, if Andre wants to sleep in there and help me out with the Mari, I can do that, because other than that, it ain't going to work. And, you know, like, I promise I'll never go in the kitchen and invade Marina's space. I just want to make sure she has a nice kitchen, because I know what it takes to, you know, look after Amari with his special foods and stuff, right? So you need a functioning kitchen. Other than that, there's no guarantees that, if anything, and even if my son was to buy a house and I could live with them and with the kids, the grandkids, and have that little safety net, right? And then, you know, die in peace knowing that my grandkids were safe. Really, how safe are they with what's happening in terms of my son and his wife buy a house, right? Somewhere in British Columbia, Canada, and 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line, whatever is happening now in this district and in that district is now happening in their district, as their parents are losing their house on the same type of politics. So is it even a good idea for my son to be thinking about investing into property in British Columbia, Canada? I don't think so. I don't think he should invest anything into Canada. Hell no, get the hell out of the country, for sure. Do you want to go to the States and invest? Well, you know, there's a lot of states out, states, like, you know, right, that have affordable housing where you can get a nice home for $500,000, $700,000, and as long as your employment is, I suppose, diversified, where you can go to work and have a job without being fired, I suppose, then, you know, you should be able to manage. You know, you should. But that's not to say that the inside of the United States of America isn't being dismantled a little piece at a time, because it is. Does he want to go to Africa and move to Nigeria, or go to Togo and invest? You know, you go to Uganda. You can get land out there for $3,000. But, you know, how are you going to support yourself? Right? You plant mace? You better buy some land so you can plant fields of mace and beans and that kind. And then you end up going to those markets selling your wares spread out on blankets. So that isn't necessarily a good idea either. You sure in the hell don't want to go to Thailand and places like that, because, you know, people that come from other countries into those types of countries, sure, the cost of living is low, but there's also a lot of traps that end up bleeding foreigners dry of their assets and they lose everything. So you have to be careful where you go, right? Now my son has his dad in Texas, so, you know, he could go to Texas, or at least in a state close to Texas, where he could at least maybe connect with his family out there, and he'd have a little bit of a family support. But, you know, I wouldn't go to Texas. Hi, Mike, how you doing? After all these years, I told you he was your son. Isn't he handsome? But he's a little burly and a little rough around the edges because, I don't know, he just kind of ended up that way. He must have inherited it from you because he sure in the hell didn't inherit it from me. Okay, you get my point. I don't think it's practical in light of what's coming to the surface here for Marcane and his wife to be thinking about buying any kind of freaking property out here at this rate. And the second thing I wanted to say are the Punjabis and people like them, maybe the Hindus and a few Muslim groups and a couple of Chinese that speak Mandarin, do they have immunity? Because if you notice, that woman that they were interviewing was white. And she did. She brought up the fact that the Punjabis come, they get their Canadian ship ASAP. Next thing you know, they're running all the businesses, they get all the jobs, they're buying all the houses, even though some of them are as poor, but yet they're managing because they're getting all these supports from our federal, provincial, and in some cases municipal subsidies, depending on who you are and where you come from. So, you know, there's just too many things against Canadian-born people that aren't a certain ethnic group, whether you're Native, Indian, or whether you're Indian from India. I guess Indian is the key word to get the go pass. Everything else goes straight to jail because you're homeless and Trump made it illegal. I'm just saying. So let's listen to this. I think this would be a good way to end this video. A little longer than I expected. I didn't expect to be watching this, but I'm not surprised because we were already warned about it. I gotta turn on the volume. And then I gotta get on with other things. I'm uploading the video with the home pain remedies that I'm gonna start working on. Yeah. Something I've been wanting to do for a couple of years now. So. Alright, you ready? Here we go.
If the freezing of truckers' bank accounts, the quest to criminalize dissent and censor us online, or watching churches burn across the nation hasn't woken you up to the parallels of communism in Canada yet, then this latest attack, that to our property rights, should. I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, bringing you an...
Yeah, don't forget, downtown, Vancouver, we've got the Chinese running their own police stations that are completely independent to any other police station in Vancouver, with their X's to say that it's their land, their territory. Yeah. Or is it little dragons that they put up there? They have their little symbols to say you're not welcome unless you follow the rules, because there are rules. Yeah. Yeah.
urgent call to act
So who do you think's running that show?
Against that threat to all Canadians in the form of a petition that you should sign and share today at our website called endlandgrabs.com.
Okay, if that's their only solution, I don't think so.
Here's why.
It's going to take more than a
By
petition.
now, many of you have heard of the BC Supreme Court's Cowichan Tribes vs. Canada ruling, which for the first time in Canadian history has declared Aboriginal title over some private fee simple lands within the city of Richmond. That's modern urban lands, including golf courses, condos, multi-million-dollar homes, regular homes bought by hard-working Canadians who have faithfully paid their taxes and mortgages for years.
Yeah, which pays a lot of Native people's welfare checks and disability checks and everything else that they utilize for the ones that are below a certain income level. I'm just saying.
Like this long-term Richmond resident who says now he may not even be able to renew his mortgage.
As a board-certified nutritionist.
Oh my God. Hell, if I want to do videos like this, come on. If I want to do videos like this, I should get that YouTube premium. So I don't have to deal with this nonsense. But I don't like the way YouTube treats me. So I have a hard time giving them my money. Because they don't respect me. No. They try to hurt me with their shadow banning and crap. And their gang stalking within their staff. When they're in the mood for it.
Do you have a mortgage on your property here in Richmond?
I do.
Have you spoken to your lender?
I have.
And what have they told you?
They are not renewing it.
Wow.
Surprise?
So, they're not renewing it, so he's stuck with what? What is he stuck with?
You shouldn't be. Banks require clear title as collateral. Your home's title is the legal proof that you own it. And if that title has just been ruled defective and invalid and inferior to Aboriginal title by Justice Barbara Young, as is the case, well, then good luck convincing a bank to take the risk on you. And it's not just private homeowners, it's companies too. According to Richmond City Councillor.
So are they going to foreclose? Are they going to be forced to foreclose? Or are their properties just going to be seized under some sort of code, under the Criminal Code of Canada, under some section, under the Criminal Code of Canada, right? And use the RCMP to do it. Huh?
Alexa Liu, a manufacturing company that's been doing business with the city for over 4 years.
These groups are going to start accusing these homeowners of committing fraud. And then it'll end up in criminal court. And then these homeowners have to hire lawyers to stay the hell out of jail. Yeah.
40 years has just
for being set up. Yeah.
been denied 100
or be treated like me and just tossed off to the curb and said, oh, you're just a waste of the court's time. Whatever you got to say is frivolous and scandalous and a waste of the court's time. Yeah. You got some sort of mental deficiency because you don't know what you're talking about. And if you do, statute of limitation, it's too late now. You can't do nothing about it. Yeah, okay.
$1 million in financing for a shovel.
Counselors say $100 million project denied loan over Chalchin case. Bank says not factor. So maybe they're building luxury condos out there and it's been denied. Maybe that's it.
Ready project to help create jobs and more due to the Cowichan Nation's land ruling. And how about those who are fighting that appeal, hey? You mean the governments, right? Canada and British Columbia, whose attorney generals both suspiciously failed to have their lawyers put forth the promising argument of Aboriginal title extinguishment when they were supposedly fighting hard for property rights on this case. Yeah, those governments, and of course, the city of Richmond, who joined those governments in completely leaving private landowners in the dark when their titles were being at risk over years of this case being argued. So much for putting the people first. Now, as shocking as it is, it really shouldn't be surprising because under the banner of reconciliation, a noble cause if that's actually what we're achieving, race-based laws and policies are creating a two-tiered society, especially in BC. Back in 2019, every single MLA in the BC legislature voted to take on an aspirational framework called the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP.
Did she say 2018? Did I not say? 15? They came in with an accord, and then they came in with a framework in, 2018? And then that's when Dr. Bonnie Henry, a.k.a. Dr. God, Dr. Death, whatever she is to you, showed up. Okay, soon after that.
legislature.
And everybody was put on lockdown. Okay, I gotta hear when that happened.
Voted to take on an aspirational framework called the
What year was that? Did she say 2018?
a two-tiered society, especially in BC. Back in 2019,
2019. Okay. 2018, 2019. 2019, 2018. That's when Dr. Bonnie Henry showed up and everybody got put on lockdown. Yeah. Okay. Remember that? Just be kind to each other. Yeah, right. Well, I went blind because I couldn't get a referral for my eyes because no doctors were seeing patients. They're all ghost buildings, kind of like this. If you look, it's a ghost building. Right.
Single MLA in the BC legislature voted to take on an aspirational framework called the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, and legislated as our own Declaration of Rights on Indigenous People Act called DRIPA. Now, you'll see UNDRIP quoted on community websites, in school board meetings, and even in the continuing education trainings for professionals, so that everybody can conform to the molds that the UN globalists have for what reconciliation should look like in countries they don't govern. Or do they?
Exactly. Or do they? And if they don't do it now, do they have the ability to do it later? And what would it take for that to happen? I gotta wait for the skip ad to come in. Okay, hold on. Turn that off. Oh my God. What kind of content creator am I?
Canada followed suit and also adopted, but kept it aspirational, unlike what happened in British Columbia, which became the first jurisdiction in the entire world to take it, make it legally binding, and make sure that we commit to having all of our laws conform to it. That includes points like this that say that Indigenous peoples have the right to the lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used.
So what happened to the government paying out the natives for whatever it is that was breached back in the day? Because it was the government that failed the natives, not the people that were living in the country. So therefore, if you're looking for, what is that called? What do black people want? Oh, I can't even think of it right now. You know, they want their 40 acres and a mule. Reparations. If Aboriginal people, natives, First Nation people, Indians, Canadian Indians, that is, not Indians from India, if they want reparations, then that reparations should come from the federal government. And if the federal government wants to offload some of that cost onto provinces and territories, well, let them fight it out in court. I'm just saying. Otherwise, this is a sham. This is like a slap in the face for anyone that's being affected by it negatively. Oh yeah. And if this continues the way it's going, and I'm going to bring this to the attention of my son, my advice is don't invest into Canada. Maybe if you're Punjabi, you get a green light. I don't know. It seems to be that way. And, you know, but they run with a different kind of crowd, and, you know, right, some of them are running with the devil and deep with, you know, some really bad stuff, and maybe they can buy their way to heaven. I don't know. They don't even believe in heaven, so wherever they're buying their way to, maybe they already got there. I don't know. All I know is that it would not be wise for my son to invest into this country based on what's happening. Period. It's not worth the risk.
Or acquired. just like the Cowichan tribes used oral testimonies to argue that they use...
In my opinion, this is straight up criminal. Yeah, it is.
...the Richmond land seasonally in the past to fit.
They've basically put my grandchildren in a position of servitude slavery to Aboriginal people when it's not a government overseer putting them in that position through corrupt politics.
Oh, and what does...
They can own, but my grandkids can't own anything. They can own everything, but my son can't own nothing? Okay, how does that make any sense? And who's paying for that to happen? Because it's not them, the Aboriginal people. They're not paying for this. It's not coming out of their pocket. They're drawing on a slush fund, just like those lawyers are getting paid. Taxpayers' money. Unless, of course, there's a cash infusion coming in from UNDRIP. Maybe Klaus Schwab is investing into this program. And maybe that's who's cutting the checks here. I don't know. Nobody's talking about that, though, are they?
The NDP government, you know, the one British Columbians are supposed to rely on to go to bat for them in defense of land rights in this appeal. Think of DRIPA now that it's clear. With cases like this and the one of the Haida Gwaii title.
So what? Flush everybody out of their houses that they've owned for the last 30 years of their life, been paying taxes on, yada-yada, you know, did house renovations, yada-yada, whatever, and what? Put them into your dinky little freaking luxury condos with their leaky pipes in the next 4 years when the clips start flying off and those plastic pipes start wiggling like little worms, shooting water into your Presto wood freaking walls as they're warping when people aren't baking in the summertime and freezing in the freaking wintertime, and guarantee the bed bugs and the cockroaches and the cupboard bugs and all the mice and even some freaking rats are going to move in as you stack and pack whoever you can fill it up with to say that you were successful with your housing, as tens of thousands lost their lives around that scheme. Oh, well, we know this video is not going to be ad friendly. Obviously not. It's too freaking real here now, isn't it? Oh, but it just puts more bodies into the assembly line when it comes to that supply and demand. Yeah, right. Well, why don't you clean up the freaking system? Do your damn job. But no. You're like a bloody ghoul. I swear. A ghoul. Anyone that wants to prop up a dead body on a hospital bed for 9 freaking days is nothing more than a ghoul. Okay? Think about it.
Agreement that it sets the stage.
Anyone that wants to cover up that and have it happen again and again and again and again as you try and hide the dirt of how many families are being flushed out of their homes one way or another because there's multiple ways of doing it, is nothing more than a freaking ghoul. And what does the devil like to have around them? A bunch of ghouls, ugly looking things that are classified as a freaking ghoul. A goblin and a ghoul.
For land grabs. They love it.
Things that don't match up.
Almost as much as they love citing UN-approved land acknowledgements that claim that their constituents live on unceded stolen land, even though mayors, like Richmond's and Port Coquitlam's, both acknowledge that such mantras are attached to legal risk due to title claims. In fact, the NDP loves DRIPA so much that right after their Attorney General Nikki Sharma attended Richmond's information session to promise Richmond residents that the NDP has their back on this case, she joined her party 2 days later to unanimously vote down one BC party's bill, which was supported by the BC Conservatives, and aimed to protect private property, including by mandating consultations with owners whose land is being claimed behind their back, and to repeal the UN-inspired DRIPA Act that's gotten us into much of this mess in the first place.
Members, the question is, first reading of the bill, Intellectual Property Rights Protection Act. All those in favor, please rise or indicate.
See that carpet? Uncle John vacuumed that carpet for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And if you notice, the government turned their back on him and left him to wallow and die an old, lonely man, crying for his family as they propped up heinous crimes, fraud, and other acts of criminal activity. Yeah. The haunting of Uncle John, Mr. Bernard John Duncan. Wherever I go, he's with me.
Thank you. Be seated. Those who oppose.
Whenever I think I see this kind of stuff, I don't get afraid. I don't. You know why? Because he told me they're dirty secrets. But that's when they were human. In those days, they were mostly human. The premier used to run around drunk outside after their little parties, because after they do this, they're fighting back and forth, acting like they're all tough and bad, right? But then after everything's all said and done, then they go off and they start drinking and partying and having, you know, their little parties in the parliament buildings. Yeah. And then Uncle John would come the next day and he'd have to clean up after them and go into the women's washroom and clean up the big mess. He said the women were the worst. Not so much the men, but the women were the worst. Yeah. Yeah. They were just a bunch of drunks. Yeah, with the premier wandering around, falling and all this crap, because Uncle John used to see him. I can't remember what premier it was, but it was years and years and years and years. And you think he was the only premier doing that? Hell no. Uncle John was a government worker for 25 years. He cleaned the left lieutenant governor's house as well. Not only did he clean this, but he cleaned the freaking premier's office with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth as he was wiping the premier's desk, for crying out loud. That's how far back Uncle John goes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And look at the dirty that they did on him. Yeah, one big cover-up.
Please rise or indicate.
That's how they show gratitude for servitude, slavery.
The motion is defeated.
So what we found, it is not legal gun owners. It's certainly not hunters or target shooters. They're involved in crime.
Let's be real.
Like I said,
Everyone,
another
especially
topic.
First Nation governments know all too well that taking away land rights arbitrarily doesn't foster reconciliation tomorrow. It fosters resentment today, the kind of resentment that divides Canadians instead of bringing us together. And that's the type of reconciliation the NDP government is supporting. And that's why you need to act. Property rights are not just about owning a home. They're literally the backbone of the entire financial system. And if this land grab sticks, if the precedent becomes that private land title can be nullified after purchase, or that the UN can fuel us into losing parks, beaches, and forests, and all behind 95% of Canadians' backs, there will be a lot more land claims than there already are.
So they put the
this
natives
entire
at 5% population compared to 95. So I guess they've increased their population over the last several years, because they used to be 2 or 3%. I guess now they're 5%. So 5% of the population, that where a large majority of them are dependent on welfare, basically, and government support one way or another, right? And we're not talking just for a while, it's their whole lives, and it's generational, and where nobody wants to, you know, me with Andre, you got to learn to take personal responsibility for things, and, you know, be accountable for your behavior, and, you know, you got to grow, right? It's not easy growing up, but, you know, you should want to grow. and it's okay to grow up, right? And this is the kind of person you want to grow into and be aware of it, and versus, borderline delinquent or whatever, or a hoodlum or whatever, right? You know what I'm saying? Or never just grow and then end up in some spot in life where nobody's going to want to be around you because you're completely dysfunctional. Well, that's, at some point, Andre has to take some responsibility for that, right? And if he doesn't, he can't be running around in 20 years from now saying, well, my Nana didn't show me the way. My Nana didn't give me the right advice. My Nana did this. It was all my Nana's fault. No. At some point, it's going to be your fault. Well, it's the same thing with the bullshit that goes on with the politics around what's going on with the culture itself when it comes to Aboriginal people and with their need to be get their reparations, right? And if you want reparations, then take your federal government to court and go get your reparations. Other than that, live among everybody in peace versus trying to create, I don't know what. It's enough that we've got the Punjabis taking over everything and forcing us out of our own country. Now we've got the freaking natives putting us on the run. Okay. Are the natives in bed with the Punjabis? Like, what ethnic group is going to have the green card? Is it going to be the Punjabis, or is it going to be the Hindus? Maybe it might be the Mandarin Chinese, or maybe it will be the Iraqis, or the Syrians from freaking, the Muslims. What fucking triads? Like, who's going to get the green light here, where the natives ain't going to touch them with a 10-foot pole? Who's going to be last on the list before the natives come for their houses? Who's the sellout? Will the sellouts please step up to the plate?
And even if it doesn't stick, and no one's forced off their land, or this all just ends up being a big fat paycheck grab instead from the tax dollars years later, we find that out. The instability this ruling is causing right now is enough to already undermine confidence in the very foundation of our economy. The belief that hard work and you can own something and be happy. Go to endlandgrabs.com to sign and share our petitions and demand that our leaders truly defend our land rights by ending UNDRIP laws and policies, ending those land acknowledgements that deny our sovereignty.
A petition isn't going to